Okay.
So it doesn't, do you need like
This is a drywall.
each individual thing by itself, or?
No. It
Okay.
could all go together. Just the big one is going to be a blanket. I don't know how big it was. So I don't know if it's going to fit in that, but
Okay.
I'll get to that point. If not,
Okay.
I'll see what they want me to do.
Are any of your partners coming, or
Nope.
just you?
Just
Okay. Need some help then?
if you're not busy.
Some work.
Blanket. That's going to be a big one. What up? How's it going? Yeah. You're going to need a case for on the film.
Do you know, I don't know if you would know what our case number on this when we assisted was.
Yours? No.
Let me look at that. Can I get a case number? Copy, thank you.
How much of that in the bag? Yeah. So this was going to be the worst one, smell-wise.
Mm. So that one's the one that needs to go by itself?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can just like drape it over this bar.
Yeah, let me see. Hopefully this can put it long. I didn't know there was this much dirt on it.
Want a separate bag for the dirt?
No, I'll just throw it on this one. Doesn't matter.
What do you need help with?
Let's see. Yeah, just hold the bag. Make sure you get the one in there. Alright, that should be good enough. There we go. let me go ahead and ask just how they want it. I think they were under the impression it was they were a little bit different. They're like extended, so we can extend this out. So let me make sure if he wants his drape over, because he said not to have it touched so it doesn't mold up.
Oh, on it, that one.
Yeah. Hey Dave, so on the dry ones, so it's not long enough or it's not big enough for us to extend it the whole way. We can drape it over, but some of it, like towards the bottom, might be touching. I don't know if that's going to affect it at all.
That's okay, yeah, just as long as try to get it dry.
Okay, try to extend it out.
Yeah, just try to get it to where it's dry. If you can find something to stick under it to raise it up off the floor, that'd be fine.
Okay, yeah, it might hit the floor, yeah, and then it might, long-wise, it doesn't look like it's going to fit all the way, so the ends might be folded up too.
Okay, yeah, I think it...
I mean, I'll try to prevent as much as possible, but that's going to be, because of the sheets too, it's going to be long.
That's okay, just if we have to keep it in there an extra day, if they're okay with that, we will, just until it's dry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Alright. Yeah, they were just, yeah, it was more the impression that way it doesn't get mold up if it crumples in that little thing. Alright.
As long as it's not one big ball, it should dry.
Yeah. Okay. And then with the dirt, did you want me to just put that in the same bag or put that in a different bag?
The dirt?
Yeah.
So the dirt really not that, because we know where she came from. Just anything else that's on there. Is the dirt falling off?
Yeah. Yeah, once we hang it out. Yeah, but there was like a big lump of dirt though. There's a huge one. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to keep all of it, some of it.
Yeah, there's quite a bit, then yeah, let's just sweep it up and we'll put it in plastic, a different plastic bag.
Okay, you want that in plastic or in paper also? I'll do paper.
Yeah, the paper's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, well, I don't know, because it might get under some stuff inside the bag, you know? Well,
That's true.
yeah, once the sand is dry, we'll just sweep it up and put it in plastic.
Okay. So you want to put that in,
We'll do that on Monday, so just whatever sand falls off of it, we'll just let it fall on the floor and we'll clean it up.
okay. Because it's quite a bit though, that's what I'm saying. Like if I throw it on the floor, it's quite a bit of dirt that's left on it.
If you throw it on the floor, what do you mean?
Yeah. Are you saying all the dirt that I collected off of it, if I just throw that on the floor of the room?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, if you already collected it, or what have you done?
Yeah, I put it in the same bag that was in the sheet.
Oh, yeah.
I was just saying if you wanted to keep it, if you wanted to put it in a different bag, or...
Yeah, just put it in a different bag. We'll put it in a plastic bag, and then we'll put it in the paper bag after everything's dry. But just don't seal the plastic bag. That way it'll dry.
Okay. Alright, and then I'll throw it in there as well. Alright.
Yeah, that'll work. I mean, the dirt's not all that important, but I don't want to make the decision to get rid of it
Yeah.
for any reason.
Fair enough. Okay. Alright. Sounds good. Thanks. Bye. Yeah, I get specific orders.
You did get specific orders?
No, I had to get exact orders on one. Can't think by myself, apparently. Alright, so he said just drape it over as much as we can. Which way is the... Okay.
I think that's the whole half of it. I'll let you do the draping.
You guys have hangers in that one too? Okay. good as that one's gonna get.
And that one, does he want the dirt to be in
Yeah.
there too?
Do you have a plastic bag? You think,
I can
or
do,
we can make one?
I can make you a heat seal bag
Yeah,
or
that'd be fine.
one of these.
I'll sit this one, just it's bigger.
How big?
Let's just go right here.
Hopefully it's sealed. Yeah, I don't think it overlaps.
Yeah, I mean, I just want the dirt to dry as well, so I'm gonna throw it in there.
You want the dirt in there to dry?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, okay. So what do we do?
Throwing this in there.
Okay, so
And-
when we use
At 1:48 a.m. on August 13, 2018, a security camera captured 34-year-old Shanann Watts walking into her home in Frederick, Colorado. She had just returned from a business trip. She was 15 weeks pregnant. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. By 5:17 a.m., her husband, Chris Watts, was loading his work truck in the driveway. The same surveillance camera caught him going back and forth, again and again, for 45 minutes. He later told police he was packing tools. But what he was really loading was the body of his wife and his 2 daughters, still alive at the time. That morning, Chris drove 45 miles to an oil site owned by Anadarko Petroleum, his employer. There, he buried Shanann in a shallow grave. Then he smothered his 3-year-old daughter, Celeste. And last, he killed his 4-year-old daughter, Bella, who had fought back. Her autopsy showed injuries inside her mouth. She bit her tongue. She struggled. And she died knowing. Later that same day, he texted his real estate agent asking about selling the house. He also messaged his mistress, "My life is like a movie right now, and it's one I never want to see." At that point, his wife and daughters were already dead. The evidence. His browser history showed repeated searches for how to delete text messages permanently and how to prepare for a new start. He had installed a hidden app on his phone disguised as a calculator where he stored nude photos of his mistress. He had deleted text threads with her just days before the murders. The morning of the murders, his truck's GPS tracked him exactly to the oil site. The time-stamped digital records showed he was planning for at least a week before. On August 4th, 9 days before the murders, he Googled when to say "I love you" to someone new. On August 9th, he told Shanann, "I feel like I fell out of love with you." She responded, "You're never going to see your kids again if you do this." She was right, but not in the way she thought. Chris Watts failed a polygraph test on August 15. He confessed the same day, partially, but it would take months for the full truth to come out. In February 2019, from prison, Chris finally admitted what he had done. He described in calm, emotionless detail how he strangled Shanann in their bedroom, how Bella walked in and asked, "What's wrong with Mommy?" How he put both girls in the back seat, how he killed them one by one, and how, afterward, he went to work as if nothing had happened. He didn't snap. He didn't lose control. He erased them methodically. The evidence doesn't lie, and it doesn't forgive. Chris Watts didn't just kill his family, he deleted them. And that is what makes him a monster. In the days after Shanann, Bella, and Celeste Watts were reported missing, investigators quickly turned to the most honest witness in the case, Chris's phone. And what it revealed, even after he tried to wipe it clean, was horrifying. Chris Watts had been carefully curating a digital double life. During a forensic search of Chris's phone, investigators discovered a disguised app called Calculator Plus. It looked like a normal calculator, but behind the correct passcode, it opened a hidden gallery. Inside were explicit photos of Nicole Kessinger, his mistress, time-stamped, saved, backed up. Photos he told the FBI he had deleted, but they weren't gone. He had also deleted their entire message thread, over 1,000 texts, removed days before the murders. But the data recovery team reconstructed parts of it. The results were clear. While Shanann was away on a business trip, Chris was on dates, taking selfies, and searching for apartments to start a new life without his family. Between August 4th and August 12th, Chris used his phone to Google when to say I love you to someone new. Can people trace deleted text messages? How to prepare for a new life in Colorado? How does a polygraph test work? These searches weren't passive curiosity. They were strategic steps, a roadmap for murder and cleanup. One of the most damning searches was from August 13th, the morning of the murders. What happens to insurance if wife dies? The timing of this query was chilling. On August 9th, Shanann texted Chris from Arizona.
She told him she felt something was deeply wrong. He had been cold, distant, avoiding her calls. She wrote, "If you're done, don't make me hold on for us." Chris replied, "I don't want to lose the kids." But just hours later, he was messaging Nicole about vacation plans. On August 12, the day before the murders, Chris told Shanann by text, "I don't think this is going to work." What Chris didn't know was that his company truck was recording everything. The GPS log from August 13 showed he backed into his driveway at 5:17 a.m., which matches the doorbell camera footage. He left home at 5:27 a.m., and he took an unusual route, not his typical workday path. He arrived at Survey 319 oil site at 6:53 a.m., where the bodies were later found. He stayed at that site longer than usual. Investigators matched this against his phone pings, text history, and his co-workers' statements. The drive, the timing, the stop, the lies, it all lined up. This wasn't a routine Monday. It was a planned disposal run. He deleted his texts with Nicole. He deleted his call logs. He deleted photos. But he forgot one thing: the cloud.
Many of the messages and photos were automatically backed up to the phone's internal memory and the cloud. Even his fitness watch betrayed him, showing strange heart rate data that coincided with the time of the murders. Investigators also pulled browser activity from his work computer, where he had read news articles about missing persons and bodies found within hours of the murders, as if to track what the media knew. On August 14th, the day after the murders, Chris searched for how long does it take for a body to decompose in oil. That same day, Nicole Kessinger cleared all texts, photos, and emails involving Chris from her devices. But law enforcement recovered enough to piece together a disturbing pattern. She had Googled Amber Frey, the mistress of convicted wife killer Scott Peterson. She also Googled, "Can cops trace deleted messages?" She later told the FBI she had no idea Chris was still married, but her search history said otherwise. Chris Watts believed he could remove his family quietly and no one would ever find out what he did. He underestimated the devices around him, the cameras, the phones, the GPS, the cloud, the metadata. They exposed him for what he truly was. Not a man who snapped, but a man who prepared, hid, and executed a digital cover-up that failed, because no matter how calm he looked on TV,
His phone knew. His truck knew. And now we know. On the morning of Monday, August 13, 2018, Chris Watts left his home in Frederick, Colorado at 5:27 a.m. He told investigators he was headed to a remote work site called Survey 319 to check a leaking oil valve with coworkers. What he didn't say was that his wife's body was in the back of his truck, and that his 2 daughters were alive when he left the house. Watts was driving a company-issued Anadarko petroleum truck, equipped with a GPS tracking system that recorded every movement, every stop, every idle. The data was time-stamped, and it would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence against him. Key GPS markers, confirmed by Weld County investigators. At 5:17 a.m., Chris backs his truck into the garage. This matches footage from his neighbor's surveillance camera. He claimed he was loading tools, but no tools were seen. Prosecutors believe he was loading Shanann's body and placing the children in the back seat. At 5:27 a.m., Chris leaves the home. At 6:53 a.m., Chris arrives at Survey 319 oil site. The location is about 45 miles away, unusually far for a routine Monday task. At 6:53 to 8:46 a.m., his truck stays parked. For nearly 2 hours, he's alone at the site. Co-workers don't arrive until later. Investigators discovered text messages Chris sent the day before, Sunday, August 12th, arranging to personally check the oil site that Monday morning. This was not his normal route. In fact, another worker was originally scheduled to go. Chris insisted on going alone. He told co-worker Troy McCoy,
I'll take care of it first thing. This message was sent before Shanann returned home from her trip, meaning the disposal location was selected before the murders occurred. That alone eliminated any claim of spontaneous rage or panic. Shanann's phone was also recovered. It showed that it stopped transmitting signal in the early hours of August 13th, presumed to be around the time of her death. Chris's phone, however, remained active, and cell tower data placed him exactly where his truck GPS did, along the route to Survey 319. There were no detours, no stops, just a direct, uninterrupted path to the place he had chosen in advance. What he did at the site. According to his later prison confession and crime scene reports, he dug a shallow grave in a dirt patch. He placed Shanann's body inside, face down, knees drawn. Then he walked to 2 separate oil tanks about 100 feet away. One by one, he opened the hatches. He dropped Celeste into one, then Bella into the other. The oil hatches were only 8 inches in diameter. Autopsy reports show no major external trauma, indicating the girls were small enough to be forced through. Chris did this while the sun was rising. He then covered Shanann's grave with dirt and a rake. At 8:46 a.m., Chris left the site. At 8:50 a.m., he texted a coworker. Site looks good. Minor leak. I'll file the report later.
By 10 a.m., he was back in Frederick. He proceeded to text Shanann's phone as if she were alive. Where are you? Please call me. Call her OBGYN to cancel her appointment. Text the real estate agent about selling the house, and then he gave a media interview pleading for help to find his family, all within hours of disposing of their bodies. During police interviews, Chris initially told investigators he left for work early and didn't know where Shanann went. He said she was home sleeping when he left. But investigators already had truck GPS data, doorbell camera footage, and cell tower location history. When asked to explain how his truck was backed into the garage, how his phone pinged at Survey 319, and why he insisted on visiting the site alone, Chris had no answers. And when police reviewed the route with him minute by minute, his story collapsed. In a crime with no gun, no bloody weapon, and no direct witnesses, it was the digital evidence that closed the case. GPS data from his company truck, call and text logs from multiple phones, cell tower pings, site assignment messages, and time-stamped security camera footage. Chris Watts thought he was being careful. He picked a remote site. He timed it early. He deleted his texts. He even packed a lunch, pretending it was just another Monday.
But the technology he used to plan it also recorded it, and in the end, it testified against him. On August 15, 2018, 2 days after his family was reported missing, Chris Watts walked into the Frederick Police Department, still denying he knew what happened to Shanann, Bella, or Celeste. He had agreed to take a polygraph test. He said he had nothing to hide, but the machine told the truth. What is a polygraph? A polygraph, or lie detector, measures several involuntary body responses: breathing rate, pulse, blood pressure, skin conductivity, sweat. These signs spike when a person is under stress, such as when lying. Polygraphs are not always admissible in court, but in investigations, they're used to identify deception early. Chris's examiner was Tammy Lee, a veteran FBI agent and polygraph expert. Before the test, she warned him, "Chris, this is not a beatable test. I hope you're not lying, because you're going to fail." During the polygraph, Chris was asked, "Did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance? Are you lying about the last time you saw her? Do you know where Shanann is now?" To all three, he answered, "No." The polygraph results came back almost immediately. He failed every major question. His body revealed what his words did not. Tammy Lee later said, "It was clear he was lying, badly. He wasn't nervous, he was deceptive." Even outside the test, Chris was failing. He sat calmly. He blinked slowly. He used past tense when referring to his daughters, even while claiming they were missing. Body language experts reviewing the footage noted several signs of deception: folded arms, self-protective; inappropriate smiling; detached tone; and shifting focus when asked tough questions; delayed emotional reactions. When the test administrator told him he failed, Chris simply asked, "What do you do next?" He didn't ask why he failed. He didn't ask what the results showed. He didn't even deny it. For 2 full days, Chris stuck to his story. He claimed, "Shanann came home at 2 a.m. They had a quiet conversation. When he left for work, she was still in bed. He didn't know where she or the girls went. He smiled for TV cameras. He texted Shanann's phone. He comforted friends. But behind the scenes, investigators were closing in. They had his GPS data, his digital footprints, and now a failed polygraph." After failing the test, Tammy Lee and Agent Graham Colder confronted Chris. They told him he knew he was lying. They said the evidence was overwhelming. They gave him a chance to tell the truth. Chris didn't confess right away. Instead, he asked to speak to his father, Ronnie Watts. In a private interview room, with his father sitting across from him, Chris finally said, "I killed her." But even then, he lied. He claimed Shanann had killed the children out of rage and that he had snapped and strangled her in response. It was a story he made up in that room to shift blame and explain why the girls were dead. Investigators knew it wasn't true, and over time, so did he. Chris's failure wasn't just in the data. It was in the way he tried to control the story. He had tried to erase texts, deleted photos, lied to police, lied to his friends, lied on television, and even lied in his confession. But his body gave him away. Not once during the polygraph or interrogation did Chris show genuine fear, grief, or panic. He wasn't afraid of being caught. He was afraid of losing the image he built. The image of a calm, suburban dad who everyone thought was too normal to kill. But the data, the evidence, and his own biology said otherwise. Chris Watts didn't confess because he felt guilty. He confessed because he had no more options. The GPS caught him. The phone data exposed him. The polygraph betrayed him. And his own words, his calm, smiling interviews, his casual tone in the face of death, confirmed what the world now knows. He wasn't broken. He was empty. When the FBI and CBI finally located the bodies of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste Watts, a team of forensic pathologists began the work Chris Watts thought no one would ever have to do: to uncover what was done from what was left behind. The autopsies were conducted by the Weld County Coroner's Office, and they told the story Chris tried to erase. Shanann Catherine Watts, age 34, 15 weeks pregnant. Shanann was found in a shallow grave at the Survey 319 oil site, wrapped in a bedsheet. Her body was face down, buried 2 feet underground, with dirt and weeds raked over her. She had no defensive wounds, no cuts, no bruises on her hands or arms. The autopsy revealed strangulation as the cause of death. More specifically, manual strangulation, by hand. There was bruising to the muscles in her neck and petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes, a sign of slow, prolonged pressure. Her hyoid bone was intact, but the trauma was clear. There was no alcohol or drugs in her system. Inside her womb was a male fetus, Nico, 15 weeks old. Nico was expelled post-mortem due to decomposition pressure, but had shown no trauma, meaning he died when his mother did. Chris killed Shanann in their bed, in the house where their daughter slept. Then he wrapped her body in a sheet from their home and buried her in an oil field. Alongside her, he buried his unborn son. Celeste Cece Watts, age 3 years old. Cece was found inside one of the 2 crude oil tanks at the site. The opening was 8 inches wide, and her body had to be forced through it. Her cause of death was determined as asphyxiation due to smothering. There were no external injuries. However, toxicology showed high levels of crude oil in her system. This meant she was placed in the tank immediately after death, likely within minutes. The oil slowed decomposition, but made autopsy conditions difficult. No signs of drugs or physical abuse were found prior to her death. Bella Marie Watts, age 4 years old. Bella was found in the second oil tank, about 100 feet from the first. She was the last to die. Her autopsy also showed death by smothering, but with one heartbreaking difference. Bella's tongue was severely bitten, and the inside of her cheeks were lacerated. Forensic analysts concluded Bella had been awake, she had fought for her life. There were signs of struggle in her mouth, but no external bruises, indicating that Chris likely used a pillow or his hand. Her toxicology report showed high levels of oil in her lungs, meaning she was still breathing when placed in the tank, or had oil inhaled during the struggle. She knew. Bella knew something was wrong. She asked her father, "Is something wrong with Mommy?" And then she became the final witness to what he had done. What the autopsies proved: none of the victims were drugged. None had pre-existing injuries. There was no indication of sudden violence or self-defense. All three were killed manually, by asphyxiation or strangulation. No weapons, no blood, no noise, just slow, intentional acts, done up close, in silence. This wasn't rage, this was elimination. A chilling detail: each body was disposed of separately. Shanann was buried in the dirt, Celeste in one oil tank, Bella in the other. Forensic examiners called it unusual and highly deliberate. Even the placement, separating the girls, suggested cold detachment, not panic. Each daughter had to be carried up a set of stairs at the oil site, and lowered into separate tanks through tight hatches, one at a time. The process took planning, strength, and time, and Chris Watts did it alone. On a workday, before 9 a.m., the final death certificate: Shanann Watts homicide. Manual strangulation: Celeste Watts homicide. Asphyxia, due to smothering: Bella Watts homicide. Asphyxia, due to smothering: Nico Watts. Fetal death associated with maternal trauma. The autopsies revealed no mystery, no doubt, no hesitation. Chris Watts murdered his entire family with his own hands, and in the end, it was their bodies that told the truth. They didn't lie. They didn't hide. They didn't change their story. They carried the evidence he couldn't delete. Chris Watts planned to kill his family. He didn't leave a note. He didn't confess until he was caught. But he did leave a trail, on his phone, on his laptop, and on Google. What Chris searched in private told a story far darker than what he said in public. August 4, 2018. 9 days before the murders, Chris searched. When to say, "I love you" to someone new. What does it feel like when someone tells you they love you? Can cops trace deleted text messages? At the same time, his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, was Googling wedding dresses. Marrying your lover after his wife dies. Will people hate me if they find out I was with someone who killed his family? These searches weren't made during the investigation. They were made before anyone was dead. August 9, 11, the weekend of the plan, Shanann was in Arizona for a work trip. Chris stayed home, and during those days, while pretending to be a father at home, he was searching apartment rentals in Brighton, Colorado, 30 minutes from home, looking up how to delete text threads permanently, sending nudes and romantic texts to Nicole, watching videos on YouTube about starting over after divorce. He also Googled, if someone deletes a message, can it be recovered? How do police find deleted photos? At this point, Chris hadn't even told Shanann he wanted a separation. But digitally, he was already gone. He wasn't just fantasizing. He was preparing. August 12th, the night before, Chris Googled, "Can I remarry quickly after divorce in Colorado? Can deleted texts be used in court? What is the safest way to wipe an iPhone?" He also sent photos to Nicole. He browsed online for cheap getaways. And later that night, he told Shanann over text, "I don't think this is going to work anymore." Shanann responded, "You're scaring me." The August 13th, 2018, the day of the murders, after killing his family and disposing of the bodies, Chris returned home around 9 a.m. He immediately began crafting the worried husband image. But behind the scenes, his phone showed he Googled real estate agents, texted Nicole, saying his life was falling apart, looked up restaurant menus to take Nicole out, deleted dozens of messages and call logs. Googled, what happens to insurance if a spouse dies unexpectedly? He wasn't panicking, he wasn't afraid, he was erasing and planning his next move. Nicole Kessinger's searches. Nicole deleted all messages with Chris from her phone after learning about Shanann's disappearance. but data recovered from her phone and laptop showed that she had Googled Amber Frey, the mistress of Scott Peterson, another man who murdered his pregnant wife. She had searched, "How much does Amber Frey make from her book deal? Can police get texts if they're deleted? Man I'm seeing is still married. Legal advice." She later told police she had no idea Chris was still married or that Shanann was pregnant, but her searches showed otherwise. August 14, 15. While the world watched as Chris gave interviews and pleaded on camera, he continued searching for missing persons interviews. How to pass a lie detector test. How long before a person is declared dead without a body? How long does it take to inherit life insurance? Investigators pulled all this from a digital forensics extraction report. These weren't assumptions. They were exact matches, with timestamps and device IDs. What this proves: these searches revealed 4 critical truths. 1. Chris was planning to start over, without his family. 2. He was searching for ways to delete and cover up digital evidence. 3. He was interested in what happens after a spouse dies, legally and financially. 4. His mistress's activity suggested knowledge and possible involvement in the cover-up. Chris never confessed out of guilt. He confessed because his digital footprints betrayed him. He believed his phone was private. He believed deleting messages made them disappear. He believed he could build a new life on top of a lie. But Google remembers. iPhones remember. And in the end, the search bar became his confession. Chris Watts didn't kill in a fit of rage. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He murdered quietly, then calmly took a shower, packed a lunch, and went to work. It was this emotional absence, not his temper, that alarmed behavioral analysts the most, because it pointed to something more disturbing than anger. It pointed to narcissistic psychopathy. What is covert narcissism? Psychologists use the term covert narcissist to describe a person who craves admiration and control, lacks true empathy, appears quiet or kind on the outside, but manipulates and lies to serve their internal world. Chris Watts fit this profile with disturbing accuracy. FBI profilers notes, CBI interview debriefs. During his interviews, Watts showed no spontaneous emotion, used past tense when referring to his children, rarely asked about the investigation or expressed fear, shifted blame to Shanann. In his first confession, talked more about his image than about the crime. He told agents, "I didn't feel like myself. It's like I was watching someone else do it. I just wanted everything to go away." But Google remembers. iPhones remember. And in the end, the search bar became his confession. Chris Watts didn't kill in a fit of rage. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He murdered quietly, then calmly took a shower, packed a lunch, and went to work. It was this emotional absence, not his temper, that alarmed behavioral analysts the most, because it pointed to something more disturbing than anger. It pointed to narcissistic psychopathy. What is covert narcissism? Psychologists use the term covert narcissist to describe a person who craves admiration and control, lacks true empathy, appears quiet or kind on the outside, but manipulates and lies to serve their internal world. Chris Watts fit this profile with disturbing accuracy. FBI profilers notes, CBI interview debriefs. During his interviews, Watts showed no spontaneous emotion, used past tense when referring to his children, rarely asked about the investigation, or expressed fear, shifted blame to Shanann. In his first confession, talked more about his image than about the crime. He told agents, "I didn't feel like myself. It's like I was watching someone else do it. I just wanted everything to go away." But nowhere in the hours of interviews did he say, "I miss my kids. I'm sorry I killed them." This absence of grief, even in private, even after capture, is not normal behavior for someone who snapped. It's the behavior of someone who disconnects from reality to preserve the only thing he truly cared about, his control. Key traits behavioral experts identified: 1. Lack of remorse. Chris cried during his sentencing. But not when confessing. Not when describing the murders, only when his public image was being destroyed. 2. Image-focused language. He worried about how people would see him now. He asked if people would hate him. He talked about how good things were going with his mistress. 3. Blame shifting. In his first confession, he said Shannon killed the girls. Even when caught, he tried to position himself as reacting, not leading. 4. Superficial charm. Co-workers described him as friendly, quiet, respectful. Neighbors said he was normal, but behind the scenes, he was cold, strategic, and deceitful. Psychologists, observation, Dr. Peel interview forensic file notes. What disturbed me most was how calculated he was. Not emotionally reactive, but emotionally absent. That's not rage, that's cold indifference. Watts didn't show signs of a mental break. He didn't hallucinate. He wasn't confused. He calculated the murders for weeks. He targeted the site. He manipulated everyone around him after the fact. The key distinction: psychopath vs. monster. Some have asked, was Chris Watts a psychopath? Most experts say no, at least not in the clinical sense. Psychopaths are often lifelong manipulators with a history of crime or abuse. Watts had no prior record, no major behavioral flags. Instead, they place him in a category even harder to detect: a low-effect narcissist with avoidant tendencies and no empathy. He didn't act out violently his whole life. He just made one massive, cold, and permanent decision, because the people closest to him no longer fit the image he wanted for himself. What the FBI profiled in internal CBI reports, investigators summarized: Chris viewed his daughters as extensions of his identity, not as individuals. He saw Shannon's pregnancy as a threat to his new life with Nickel. He didn't view death as tragic, he saw it as a solution. He never expressed anger, only regret for being caught. This is why experts say he wasn't just a liar. He was a man with no emotional anchor, a man who could erase his family and then flirt over text the same day, a man who could bury his daughters and still worry about his media image. Why this matters: understanding how Chris Watts thinks is not about excusing him. It's about identifying what made him capable of this crime. He wasn't chaotic. He was contained. He wasn't broken. He was hollow, and that's why forensic psychologists don't call him a man who lost control. They call him something else: a family annihilator. 6 months after he murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, Chris Watts finally told the world what really happened. Or, at least, part of it. On February 18, 2019, FBI agents, Colorado Bureau of Investigation officers, and investigators from the Frederick Police Department traveled to the Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. There they sat down with Chris for a 5-hour interview, and for the first time, after countless lies and deflections, he offered a full confession. But even then, what he said didn't fully match the evidence. His tone flat, factual, empty. The interview was recorded. Agents described his manner as calm, polite, and unemotional. He gave horrifying details, with no tears, no breakdowns, no tremors in his voice. When asked why he was ready to talk, Chris said, "I don't know, I just thought it was time to get it out." What he claimed happened. According to Chris, around 4 a.m. on August 13th, Shannon initiated a conversation about their relationship. He told her he didn't love her anymore. She said he'd never see the kids again. He snapped, climbed on top of her, and strangled her to death. He said Bella walked in during the act and asked, "What's wrong with Mommy?" He then wrapped Shannon in a sheet, dragged her body down the stairs, put her in the truck, placed both girls, still alive, into the back seat, drove 45 miles with their mother's corpse beside them, smothered Cece with a blanket first, then smothered Bella, who begged him, "Daddy, no." That was her last known word. He told this story without emotion, not a single apology, not a single tear. He even yawned at one point, describing the deaths of his daughters as if he were recounting a routine morning. What still doesn't add up even after his confession? Several inconsistencies remain. 1. Why did he choose the oil site in advance? He never admitted that the site was chosen deliberately. But texts from the day before show he assigned himself the location, out of normal rotation. 2. Why was Bella's autopsy different? She showed signs of fighting back. Injuries in her mouth suggested a struggle, inconsistent with a quiet death. 3. Why were they placed in separate tanks? He never explained why he split the girls up. This separation suggests more planning and psychological distance than a snapped father. 4. Why delete all his texts and photos? If it wasn't premeditated, why erase digital records days in advance? 5. Why keep shifting the story? This version contradicted his first confession, where he claimed Shannon killed the girls. Which version, if any, is the full truth? Chilling word choices during the interview, Chris said, "It just felt like something took over me. I felt like I wasn't even there. Everything just happened so fast." These are the same phrases often used by family annihilators, men who calmly murder their entire family to start over without consequences. Clinical, detached. No why, only what. Investigators' takeaways after the interview. One agent said, "He's still lying, just less than before." They believe the confession was carefully crafted, strategically incomplete, a way to regain control of the narrative, and potentially designed to protect Nicole Kessinger. To this day, Kessinger maintains she had no knowledge of the murders. Chris never directly implicates her, but investigators still find the timing of their deleted texts, search histories, and post-murder conversations suspicious. A monster hiding in a man's clothing, even in confession. Chris Watts tried to sound human. He said, "I read the Bible every day. I want to be forgiven. I hate what I did." But when asked why he didn't stop, why he didn't turn around, he had no answer. And that silence, after all the lies, was the closest he ever came to telling the truth. Chris Watts didn't confess out of guilt. He confessed because everything else had failed. His lies, his performance, his charm, all gone. Only the truth remained. And even then, he still couldn't tell it all, because a man who kills his family to protect his new image isn't afraid of what he's done. He's afraid of who we'll see when the mask comes off. On November 6, 2018, just 85 days after he murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all 9 criminal counts against him. 5 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy, 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. The plea came without a trial, no jury, no cross-examination, no witness testimony. It was over. Waited. The plea deal was negotiated to avoid the death penalty. District Attorney Michael Rourke said the Watts family, particularly Shannon's parents, supported the agreement. They didn't want years of appeals. They didn't want to hear the details in court. They wanted closure. So Chris accepted 5 consecutive life sentences, plus 84 more years. No parole, no possibility of early release, no death penalty. Shannon's mother's statement at sentencing, Shannon's mother, Sandra Zuchek, said, "We loved you like a son. We trusted you. Your faithful wife trusted you. Your children adored you, and they also trusted you. You disgust me." The sentence, Chris Watts was immediately transferred out of Colorado due to safety concerns. He now serves his sentence at the Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, in protective custody, isolated from the general population. He spends 23 hours a day alone in his cell, 1 hour of solitary recreation, 1 10-minute shower per day. No contact with the outside world except by written mail. What many still question even with the plea, some questions remain, not about his guilt, but about what was left uninvestigated. 1. Why wasn't Nicole Kessinger further investigated publicly? She deleted messages. She searched for financial outcomes of high-profile murder mistresses. She claimed ignorance of Shannon's pregnancy, despite proof otherwise. No charges were filed. No public accountability followed. To this day, some believe she had deeper knowledge than she admitted. 2. Why no trial at all? Many experts say Chris could have received the same sentence after a trial, but the deal avoided emotional damage to the Ruzichek family. Still, the lack of full public discovery left gaps in the record, especially about motive, money, and the psychology behind his double life. 3. Was justice truly served? Chris confessed, but only after digital, GPS and polygraph evidence cornered him. He spared the system a trial, but he also spared himself full public exposure under oath. For the final fact, Chris Watts never took the stand. He never told the full truth under penalty of perjury. He has given 0 interviews outside of controlled FBI sessions, and he has not cooperated in any ongoing analysis of why he did what he did. Everything we know comes from what he allowed, not what he was forced to reveal. So in the end, the justice system closed the door. It gave the family peace, it gave the community closure, and it gave Chris Watts exactly what he wanted, the final say in his version of events. What can never be erased? Shannon, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico are gone. Their graves are silent. Their voices were silenced by someone who never raised his voice in public. There was no outburst, no warning, no goodbye, just a quiet erasure, done by a man they loved. The last words that matter. Chris Watts said very little at his sentencing. But Shannon's father said this: "You took away my whole family. You should live with that every single day of your life." The case of Chris Watts is not just about murder, it's about betrayal so deep, it looked like love until the very end. The cameras saw a father, the neighborhood saw a husband, but the evidence saw the truth. And that truth was this: he didn't just kill his family, he planned their absence. He rehearsed their removal, he tried to delete them, and if the data hadn't spoken, he might have gotten away with it.